Hi there. Welcome to the Kessler Law Firm podcast. I'm Michael Kessler, your host, and we got a special treat for you today. Any minute now, we are going to be joined by the illustrious Jeremiah Lyons, former NYPD police detective and best-selling author. And we're going to talk about the United Healthcare CEO murder and more accurately, the police investigation. I want to give a special welcome to my good friend Jerry Lyons. And Jerry, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background before we dive into this case?
All right, I spent 20 years in New York City. I retired there as a detective, first grade detective. Then I went into the private investigative business, where I've been lucky enough to work with good attorneys like yourself and other attorneys and some high profile cases.
I know one of your high profile cases was the Casey Anthony case. I
Right,
think you were working on that case when we met.
right. We met right after that case.
That's
And
right.
you were the first attorney that I worked for. You were the first attorney who gave me a chance after that case. And I'll always remember that and I'll always appreciate it.
Well, I'll tell you what, you earned it, and you earned every other case I've sent your way since, even if you never brought Casey in for a job interview. Folks, I told Jerry when her case was over that I would hire her as our receptionist here at the law firm, and we would tell her to change her hair color, and we were going to tell her to go by her middle name so that it wouldn't be Casey Anthony. And we were going to teach her that anytime anybody said, "You look like Casey Anthony," her response should be, "Oh, I hear that all the time."
Yeah, people tell me that all the time.
Yeah. And it would be Casey and Jerry and I, it would be our private little joke. But she went on to bigger and better things elsewhere, and we wish her the best.
Right,
Well,
right,
she went on to other things elsewhere.
right, right.
Better, okay. So, Jerry, you and I were chatting yesterday about this Mangione case,
Luigi.
Luigi Mangione. Um, Tell us about it from the perspective of an NYPD detective leading the investigation into this murder.
Well, it's a funny thing. I think about it all the time. When I was on the job, they didn't have the technology that they have today.
Sure.
Face recognition, all this stuff. I mean, we had fingerprints, but fingerprints wouldn't tell you who did the crime. You'd have to catch the guy, and then fingerprints would confirm, yeah, you got the right guy. So, but this guy, Mike, I tell you what, I was really disappointed. Well, going back to your question, they had a bunch of circumstantial evidence. They had the stuff from Starbucks with his fingerprints on it. They had a typical man flirting with a girl is becoming his downfall when he pulled down the mask and showed his face. And so they had things, but they had circumstantial things.
Well, let's talk about those circumstantial things. Um, Even if pulling down the mask revealed his face, and they had fingerprints on a Starbucks cup, that puts him at a Starbucks in Manhattan. How many Starbucks are there in Manhattan?
It's quite a few, every other corner.
And how many people go to Starbucks for coffee in the morning?
Quite a
I mean,
few.
that's circumstantial evidence, but it doesn't really tie him to the crime. It just puts him in New York.
Puts them in the area. Puts them in the area.
And this particular Starbucks was not very far away from the scene of the shooting.
Right.
But, you know, if I know Starbucks and I know cities, there probably were a whole bunch of Starbucks within a couple of blocks of this location.
Right.
So that's not the strongest evidence, at least the fingerprints on the Starbucks cup. Now, the identification based on the video from the Starbucks. Okay, that puts him pretty close. What else did they have?
Well, after they,
Let's talk about before they
yeah,
captured this man.
I tell you what, they didn't have much. I mean, they had him going. They had him in a cab. Right? They had him in a bike on a bike, and then they had him going through Central Park, coming out of Central Park, jumping into a cab, and getting out of the cab at 178th Street, and where there's a bus terminal, the George Washington Bridge bus terminal. But
So
from
let me
there,
stop you. Let me stop you there for a minute. How far is that from the scene of the shooting?
well, the scene in the shooting was about 54th Street to 178th Street. It's got to be 10 miles.
And so he rode his bike, which must have been stashed nearby. He rode the bike to Central Park, and then he got into a cab that took him to the station.
Right. Right.
Okay.
But from that station, so they got that. But that's it. It
When you
ends there.
say when you say they got that, what do they have?
Well, they got nothing. They got the guy in the cab who looks like the guy who pulled down his mask.
Well, I mean, was that from a video and taken inside the cab?
Yes.
And how did they have him getting to Central Park? How did they know that he went to Central Park?
Cameras in the street. There's a bunch of cameras in the streets in New York.
Okay, so on his bike, he showed up on one camera after another on his way to Central Park.
Right. They even had him coming down one side street, you know.
And so somebody with NYPD had to look at these video images.
And put them together. They had to look at thousands of video images looking for something like this.
Looking for somebody that fit what started as a very general description.
Right.
Okay. So now they've tracked him to the station at 117th,
178th Street.
178th Street. Okay. So what happened after that? What do the police determined happened after that?
What happened after that? They determined that he jumped on a bus. But you know what? That he didn't necessarily have to jump on a bus
So the
because
police suspected that he jumped on a bus because they didn't see him come back out of the station.
right, they saw him go in, but they never saw him come out. So
Okay.
they figured he jumped on a bus. But you know, and which he did, but that's they shouldn't have come and settled in on that because there's an entrance to the subway from there. And you jump on the A train. They made a song about that, I think. But anyway, you jump on the A train, and 20 minutes later, you're in Midtown Manhattan. You're at the Port Authority at 42nd Street. You jump on a bus there. You go anywhere in the country. You take it one more stop. You got Penn Station. You jump on an Amtrak there. You go anywhere in the country.
Well, let's come back to the station at 178th. What's the situation there regarding cameras? I mean,
it's not like it is in, say, Midtown.
okay.
Like I said, they have cameras. I know in the entrance.
So they didn't have him on camera getting on a bus.
No, they probably don't have cameras on the platforms for the buses.
Would they have had cameras if he had gone down to the subway?
I don't know. I really don't. I remember being there, and I lived in that neighborhood 100 years ago, and I don't remember ever seeing cameras going into the subway.
I haven't seen any in any of the news reports that they settled on him taking a bus because they viewed camera footage and saw that he didn't go down to the subway.
Right.
So we're guessing that they did not have him on camera inside the station going anywhere.
Anywhere. No, they lost him. Once he went in there, they lost him.
Okay, so what happens after at least some of the detectives working the case were working on the theory that he took a bus somewhere.
Right.
Okay. And maybe others were looking into the subway angle and we didn't read about it because it didn't pan out. I guess that's possible. I'm sure there were a lot of police working on this case with NYPD. But okay, so they're operating on a theory that he took a bus out of that station. what did they do then?
All they could do is what they did, and they put his picture out, and that is it.
Okay.
And from there, I was thinking, because I really did thought this guy was a little bit smarter than he actually turned out to be, because from the bus terminal up there by the George Washington Bridge, you get buses. It's 4.5 hours to Buffalo, New York. What's on the other side of Buffalo, New York? There's a river there, Canada.
Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
And and
Slowly I
and oh,
turned.
Canada is on the other side.
Right. And this guy had a passport. What the heck is he still sticking around? So
At
he could have
at
went.
this point, Jerry, did they have a name on
They
the
had
suspect?
nothing. They had nothing.
They were just looking for a guy that matched the picture from the
With bushy
Starbucks.
eyebrows. A guy with bushy
And
eyebrows.
they were, if they caught a suspect, they were going to compare fingerprints.
Right.
But his fingerprints weren't in the system yet, so they didn't have
He's
a
never been
name.
arrested. He's never been arrested. Even the DNA. Think about it. Even if they got DNA off the, wrappers or the cups or anything else that he touched, he wasn't in the system. So the DNA wouldn't have told them who he was.
Okay. So he's on a bus, and I imagine they showed his picture to every bus driver that left that station that day,
They probably did.
but nobody said, "Oh yeah, I remember him."
No.
Not surprising. That's not what bus drivers are paid to do. They don't look too
Right.
closely
And
when
they
you get
probably
on
don't
it.
want to get, yeah, they're not looking at the people getting on. They snap your ticket or they do whatever with your ticket and that's it.
Okay. So you and I are both surprised at the evidence that was in this fellow's possession when he was found. Let's talk about that.
All right.
What did he have from what you've read, and why are you surprised?
He had the same ID that he used from New Jersey, the same ID that he used to check into that rooming house or whatever hostel, whatever that thing was. All right.
Right.
He had the same ID from there, and that's what he gave the cops. This guy who I thought was smart, Ivy League guy, that's what he gave the cops. He had a passport, like I said, so he could have been anywhere, but he also had the gun or a gun that is similar to the gun that they believe he used when he killed the guy.
So why keep the gun? You've
And his,
planned out this shooting very carefully, apparently very meticulously. You pulled it off in broad daylight and you got away from the scene. You take a bike, you take a cab, now you've taken a bus, and you've gotten away from the crime scene. Why keep the gun?
I thought the first thing he should have done was get rid of it because that's the only thing that ties him directly to the crime. Right. But, in his
Right.
manifesto, whatever he wrote, whatever he wrote, they deserve this. They. So I'm thinking he kept the gun because his business wasn't finished.
And there's all kinds of things he could have done with the gun after the shooting. I mean, he could have
Right.
just dropped it someplace. I guess he could have, as bold as he was, he could have put it in a box and mailed it to wherever he was going next.
Yeah, they could. Yeah. Yeah. But I know the cops searched one of the lakes in Central Park thinking that he probably threw it in the lake.
Thinking that
And
he did what you and I might have done.
right, right, right. So, but he
So he
didn't.
had with him, from what you've seen, he had a gun that seems to match the description of the gun used in the shooting,
Right,
which was sort of a unique homemade gun, right?
right.
Um, and he had his what they're calling a manifesto. I think of a manifesto as being a little bit more than 3 pages, but okay.
Right,
Um,
right.
they're taking the language from the Unabomber case, and the Unabomber apparently was one of his role models. But so he had 3 pages of handwritten notes in a spiral notebook. Why in the world would he have that on it?
He was traveling. I believe he was in Altoona because the bus stopped there for lunch or whatever, and so he was traveling. I guess he never thought he was going to get caught or caught like he did, And I guess that's why he had this stuff. But gee whiz, why would you have the manifesto, that 300-word thing, what I did for my summer vacation? Why would you have that with you? Why would you have the gun with you? Like you said, mail the gun someplace.
And if you're writing your magnum opus, your manifesto, why not do it on a computer and save it somewhere and not, I mean, I wouldn't be walking around with handwritten notes.
No, no, they didn't have to question him. He had the confession written down, right?
We've talked about this with lots and lots of cases over the years. People who plan out the crime and don't plan out the escape.
Right.
And that seems to be what this very well-educated young man did.
I think he planned it out somewhat. He got out of New York City. He got out of New York City. Was probably out of New York City within an hour from the crime.
Well,
And
I mean, that's pretty quality work,
yeah,
I suppose.
and I'll tell you, Mike, when I was a detective, I was always thankful that the people committing the crimes were not rocket scientists. All right. But with this guy, I mean, I thought he was smarter than the average guy, smarter than the average criminal. And it turned out he's not a rocket scientist either.
No, he's certainly not going to be a tough case to defend.
I think so. So, and what do you think's going to happen? He's fighting extradition. What do you think's going to happen with that?
Well, that's generally a slam dunk. All they have to prove for extradition is that he's the same guy that there's a warrant out for from New York City. All they have to do is prove that it's the same guy. They don't have to prove he's guilty of the homicide.
Do they have to give probable cause?
They have to. I don't know what the standard is in Pennsylvania, in the Commonwealth, but they have to convince the judge in Pennsylvania that it's the same guy. But they do that by the governor of New York will sign a warrant seeking the extradition and laying out the details and sending that to the governor of Pennsylvania, and he'll review it and he'll issue Pennsylvania's governor's warrant. And that's really all that it takes. Occasionally an extradition gets denied when the requesting state fails to submit sufficient proof that it's the same guy they're looking for.
Right.
Jeremiah Lyons is an unusual name, not a common name. However, if the only thing they had was your name on the warrant from New York City and your name on your ID when they found you in Altoona, Pennsylvania, that's not enough.
Right.
Now, occasionally in cases I've seen over the years, where it's not a really high profile case, the governor of one state or the other doesn't get around to issuing their warrant within the time period that the law permits. And when that happens, the judge in the holding venue releases the guy. It doesn't mean he's cleared of the crime. Right. And he can be picked up again on another warrant and extradited some other time.
Right.
But that's really the only benefit you get from winning an extradition fight. Now he's delaying it, and there may be some benefit to that. He or his family may be getting a defense team put together while he sits in the Altoona jail. We all know the quality of the defense team can make a big difference.
Right. But this, like you said before, this is a hard case to defend.
This would be it seems like a very hard case. It seems to me that a mental health evaluation would be in order.
First thing.
Because it might be a defense.
Right.
I mean,
oh yeah.
Everybody in the country knew that John Hinckley's the guy who shot President Reagan, but he was ultimately found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Right. And
That's
he's out.
something to go
And
down.
he's out now. Can I ask you a question? I know it's your podcast, but can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So, what do you think when they released the pictures of this guy? He's a big shot in high school, big shot in college, has his master's. He's not too far from the city. He's down here in Baltimore, right? Has friends, has relatives, not one phone call. Not one phone call to the cops saying, I know who that guy is. With a $50,000 reward.
Yeah, I'm surprised that nobody called.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, family not calling, I don't know if God forbid that was one of my kids. I don't know that I would call. I've
Right.
always found it amazing that David Kaczynski turned in his brother, the Unabomber.
Right.
Um,
But there's friends, they could use, people could use that 50,000.
Certainly friends or even not friends, just acquaintances.
Right. Right.
People that went to high school or college with him may have recognized him. Um, or it's also possible, Jerry, that nobody made the connection until he was captured and his name came out. Maybe he doesn't look quite like he used to look.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a clean shaven guy
Right.
now. I don't know what he might have looked at. I mean, that was one of the things that surprised me. I would have thought once he got out of New York, one of the first things he would try to do is change his appearance. You
Yeah. He
know,
didn't, nothing like
shave
that.
his head or color his hair or grow a
Well,
beard.
yeah, at least start to grow a beard. I mean, it
Yeah.
was only 5 days, but at least, do
Yeah, I
something.
would have expected something like that. Or I mean, take the easy way out, buy a disguise,
Yeah. Yeah.
buy a beard or mustache and wear it. I don't know. We think of things when we see things our clients didn't get away with that maybe they were close and could have.
Right. Right. But I
Well,
just,
listen,
this guy was so smart and so stupid at the same time.
speaking of getting away with things, while I've got you here, tell us about Ricky Burns.
Oh, Ricky. Ricky Burns is a character who I made up, and I've been writing books about the Ricky Burns mysteries. And the first book is Two in a Head, and that's based on, I was the investigator for Aaron Hernandez, who was accused of killing two people in Boston. Aaron
And
Hernandez was the football player.
for our listeners, Aaron Hernandez was a star tight end with the New England Patriots, and before that, he starred at the University of Florida on their national championship teams.
Right.
And he was accused of an attempted homicide in
No.
Florida.
Oh, yeah. Attempted homicide in Florida and a double murder in Boston. Killed two people in Boston.
And the first Ricky Burns story, Two in the Head, was based on the accusation against the fictional football player was that he shot a guy once in the head and he didn't die.
Right. Right.
I'm not going to give up any of the rest of it.
Okay. And
No spoilers here.
okay. And the second book is Oh Baby, and that's taken from the Casey Anthony case, and where Ricky Burns is Jerry Lyons, and so it's what Ricky Burns did
I
with
never
Jerry
made
Lyons.
I never made the connection.
You're kidding me?
Yes, I'm kidding you.
I know, yeah, I know, yeah.
Yes, I'm kidding you.
So,
But there's two more.
yeah, Killer Camp is about a case I had in the Panhandle where a woman is convicted and doing life for killing another woman. And she told me, she said, Jerry, I didn't do it. I was set up. And so it's on an appeal right now. It's for ineffective counsel. And I looked into it and I found two other people more likely to have done this killing than her.
Oh, that's
One is her
fascinating.
husband and one is her boyfriend. And she had an open marriage. So that's an interesting case. And so that's Killer Camp. And then the last one that just came out a little while ago is Seriously Serial Murders. And it started out, I had a client years ago who was Chinese. He lived in one state, had a girlfriend in another, He was married, living in one state with a girlfriend in another. The girlfriend told him, I want to start to see other people. So he killed her. And so there wasn't too much more to write about that. That was an open and shut case. That was a slam dunk for the prosecution. So there really wasn't too much to write about it. So I went off and I made the book into a serial, a killer who was a serial killer. Has a lot of twists and turns. And I think it's a pretty good book. I think it's a pretty good.
Where can I find these books?
On Amazon. Oh, they're all on Amazon. And
All
Ricky
right.
Ricky Burns, or Google Ricky Burns Mysteries, and there's a link on there.
Sounds like they might make pretty nice Christmas presents for people that like murder mysteries.
I like to think so. I like to think so. So, but yeah, it's fun doing them, but it's fun and frustrating at the same time. So,
Understood.
yeah.
Understood. Well, Jerry, I appreciate your joining us this afternoon. I'm going to stay in touch with you. And as this Mangione case travels through the court system, we're going to talk again and again.
All right. That's great. And any other thing that comes up, Mike, I love you to death. You're a great friend. And this is a good, any reason to chat with you is a good reason.
Thanks for joining us on the Kessler Law Firm podcast. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on your favorite podcasting site, please click subscribe or follow. So next time you come back, our latest podcast will be ready and waiting for you. And if you'd like to connect and find out more about us, visit our website at www.kesslerlawfirm.com.